Welcome everyone, welcome. I feel like, I know we're here to talk about our children, but I feel like we need to start by congratulating ourselves for even getting in this room, or for those at home, getting in front of the computer or the iPad or the phone, because it's not always easy. So I feel like we need to all give ourselves a big round of applause for even being here. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So we're going to start here. I want you to imagine your child at their 18th birthday party, and you're amongst family and friends, and you're sitting in the audience, and your child is up here giving a speech for their 18th birthday. What do you want to be seeing in your child? What do you want to be noticing about them? What do you want to be proud of? Because really this is our job, isn't it? To get them from wherever they are now to at least adulthood, and then we can push some of the responsibility or more of the responsibility onto them. But it's a nice place to start, because we're here to talk about behaviour, but what we're really here to talk about is raising human beings, okay? And so as we're going through tonight's presentation, you might have it in the back of your mind what brought you here, what specific behaviour is going on in your house that you'd like to change or see shift, and that's great. But also see if you can keep in mind the bigger picture of your child's 18th birthday and who that person is that you're seeing in front of you. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through this model that has 3 core components. I'm going to explain the model in total, then we're going to go into more detail, and tonight we also have some other very special guests who are going to appear here in video form. Last year I ran an online program for a group of parents all around exactly what we're going to talk about tonight, and they're going to share with you their experiences, what they learnt, what they took away, and what's working for them and their family. So you're not just going to hear from me, you'll also hear from them as well. So we start here with your child. And if I asked you, what do you want for your child, or how do you want them to be at their 18th birthday, a lot of parents will say, in fact the top answer is probably, I want my kids to be happy, right? And I think that's a great place to start. But I just want to unpack this a little bit more, because there's actually much more to life than happiness. And in fact, there's, I think, a couple of other factors that are even more important, because they are what contribute to happiness or well-being. So when I think about what I want for my children, I have a almost 16-year-old daughter and an almost 14-year-old son. I think of these 3 things. The first thing is, I want them to have a strong sense of who they are. Okay, I want them to know who they are. I want them to love who they are. And I want them to be who they are. Not anyone else, because there's plenty of other people in the world. We actually just need our kids to be who they are. So giving them that strong sense of self, I think is really important. The second thing is having a sense of purpose. That just means having something that's important to them beyond themselves. Okay, and all of us, when we have a life of meaning and purpose, live a much better life. And then the third thing, is belonging. So people tend to operate better in communities, in connection with others. So that sense of belonging is also really important. So these are the 3 things that I really think of when I think about what I want for my children. So I want them to know who they are, I want them to have a sense of purpose and meaning in their life, and I also want them to have a sense of belonging. So everything we're going to talk about tonight is about raising kids who, on their 18th birthday, we can say, yes, this is what they have. So there are 3 components to this framework, to actually being able to achieve that. And the first one is behaviour coaching. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you tonight about behaviour coaching, how to do it, what it means, what is behaviour, how to understand our kids' behaviour, because no behaviour is random. Everything our kids are doing is happening for a reason. And the better that we understand that, the better we will be able to respond to it. If we don't have behaviour coaching skills, this is what happens. We generally get pretty poor behaviour. Okay, and I know that none of us want that in our families. So that's why the behaviour coaching is so important. But that's only one element. So if you came along here to a talk about behaviour, and all you heard from me was about behaviour, then I would be doing a complete disservice to everyone in this room and everyone at home. Because behaviour, as we'll find out in a minute, is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay? It's what we see, but it's not everything. So that's why we also have to talk about emotional coaching. And this is where many of us can get unstuck. Because all of us have grown up in families where emotions have been dealt with in certain ways. And it might not be the most effective way. And it might not actually be helping our children. So that's why we need to talk about emotional coaching. The other reason we need to talk about emotional coaching is if we don't, we're going to have a household of emotional dramas. And again, none of us want that. So you can come along to this talk tonight. We could talk about behaviour coaching, we could talk about emotional coaching. But if that's all we talked about, again, I'd be doing you a disservice, because there's another really, really important component which we cannot overlook, and that is us as parents, as people bringing something to a relationship with our kids, okay? Because that's all parenting is. It's just a relationship. So we actually need to look at ourselves, and we need to look at what we're doing in the relationship if we actually want to change things. If we're happy with how everything is, fine. Don't look at yourself. Don't look in the mirror. But if you do want to change things, you have to look in the mirror as well as look at your children, look at your child. If you don't, you're going to get really ineffective parenting. And we actually know that parenting is really important for kids' outcomes, which is why Parenting SA create events like this. And I'm sure why all of you are here. So we need to actually also be looking at ourselves in our parenting. Now, once we kind of get these 3 pieces of the puzzle together, yes, we can get better behaviour. Yes, we can get less emotional dramas, but we can also get two bonuses out of this relationship. And the first one is just a more easeful, harmonious home. Just more kind of flow and ease in our families, more harmony. Now, this does not mean perfection, okay, because, you know, we're living in the real world, not some fabricated TV land. Not perfection, but much more harmony. And the other factor, which can be really overlooked, but is actually, I feel like the key to parenting, is our own personal transformation. Okay? Because if you think, can you think back? Can you actually remember yourself before you became a parent? I have distant memories. And it feels like a total lifetime ago. Like it feels like there's a really big difference between pre being a parent and post being a parent. Massive change. So we actually get to transform through this relationship as well. And it's actually where the real gold is. It really is. So here we have a beautiful model. Now, if we just boil it down, if this is looking a little bit too complex, it's really these three factors. And they're the three factors that we're going to focus on tonight. So we're going to look at behaviour coaching first, emotional coaching second, and then we're going to get onto parenting qualities. Now, before I dive into it, I want you to hear from some of the parents who joined the program last year to hear about some of their experiences of working with these practices.
If someone was going to ask me about using positive behaviours within my family and is that helpful, I would say absolutely, just do it. It changes everything. It changes the temperature of your household. You work together more as a team than individuals headbutting each other. I found I actually already had a lot of the skills, I just didn't realise. So it's actually not as hard as I thought it was going to be. The time that I've invested in learning these skills have been really worth doing. So just do it.
The most surprising things about using the positive strategies is the speed at which your relationship with your children can change. Especially I find with my 8-year-old, we had quite a fiery relationship because we've both got big emotions, and that's really reset due to using positive approaches. Then we can have much more deep, meaningful conversations and build a much happier, fun relationship going forward, which is really exciting.
The things that surprised me most about this approach were probably in terms of, how quickly they worked. Like, it was amazing. You'd try something out, you'd go a few days doing something the same way that you've always done it, and unsurprisingly, you get the same result. And then you try something different and, wow, how did that work? So that's been really good. But I think as well, the thing that surprised me about using this approach has been what I've learnt about my kids, and the things that have been unexpected about what I've learned about their personalities and what they're capable of as well. They can do way more than I gave them credit for originally. And they enjoy doing it as well, they enjoy being more involved and having a bigger role in what happens with our family.
I swear that we did not script these responses. These are true responses of people who joined the program and were asked about their experience of it at the end of it. So you don't just have to take my word for it, you can also take these other parents' word for it. So let's start here with behaviour. Do you know why children misbehave? I'm going to tell you, but I want to start here, okay? Let's look at this word misbehaviour. I think it's much better if we reframe it to missed behaviour, okay? So when your child is doing that and it's really annoying and you've asked them 1,000 times and they're still doing it or they're not doing it, whatever it is that you've asked them to do, what's happening is it's a missed opportunity for them to make a good choice, to behave well, to do the right thing. Okay? So what this frame does is it thinks about behaviour as learning. Okay? So what we're actually trying to do when we're trying to change our kids' behaviour is we're trying to help them learn. In fact, that's all we're trying to do. So we actually know that kids, not just kids, but people don't learn as well through negativity, through nagging, through yelling, through punishment. In fact, we know that people and kids learn better through more positive approaches, encouragement, validation. understanding. Okay? This, and as we'll talk about later, this is not permissive parenting. Okay? This is not letting your children run the show. Not at all, right? There are still expectations. There are boundaries. There is still right and wrong. But we're just coming at it from a place of we're trying to guide our children towards better behaviour through a positive lens. And if you've got a child, some of you probably do. I was in private practice yesterday. I had a couple in my rooms who have a really defiant child, right? Another way to describe a defiant child is a child who is spirited, who knows their own mind, who wants to do things their way, who likes a lot of agency, who likes to feel like they're making the choices and decisions. Fine. You can battle that. Go for your life. You will not win the battle. You can turn it around and work with them, not against them. You'll both get there together. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do. Children do not need to be punished to know how to behave well. Okay? What we're trying to do is give them opportunities to behave well and support and provide the right strategies and support for them to do that. So let's look at why kids misbehave. Because as I said, there's always a reason. There's no such thing as random behaviour. There's always a reason. So before we do that, let me just explain, or let's just have a little chat about what behaviour actually is. Okay? Because behaviour, as I said before, is tip of the iceberg. Here it is. It's what we see. It's the child hitting. It's the child yelling. It's the child throwing things. It's the child not doing the chores. It's the child not listening. It's all of those things. I'm sure some of those are happening in your house. But behaviour never exists alone, okay? There's always more to it. And this is true for us too. This is true for every human being. Behaviour is also coupled with thoughts and emotions, always, okay? So you don't just get behaviour, you always get thoughts and emotions with it. So let me give you an example. Does anyone here not like running late? Okay, so what is it, when you're a person who does not like, so okay, the fact is that you're running late, right? That's just the facts. When you are a person who does not like running late, how do you behave? Right, I'll tell you how I behave, right? So I get a bit flustered and I'm racing through the traffic and you're getting a bit, and you get a bit stressed and you're going, oh, I'm late and that's not good, right? So you've got these thoughts going on in your head, this story, and you've got emotionally, you're feeling a bit anxious or whatever. That's how I behave, because I actually grew up in a family where it's not good to be late. You let people down. There's probably some people in this room, or you might know some people, who actually have no problem with being late, right? None whatsoever. And so how do they behave when they're running late? I actually don't know this as well because it's not me, but I imagine, they're like, oh, it's okay. I'll get there, as soon as I can. They're probably not feeling very tense. They're probably still pretty relaxed. They're probably thinking about, what's coming up or what happened yesterday. They're not really focused on, on the fact that they're late, right? And the behaviour is really different. So if we just see the behaviour, we're missing the whole picture. And the behaviour is often fuelled by the thoughts and emotions, okay? Because if I was the kind of person that, didn't mind running late, then I wouldn't feel stressed at all. And I wouldn't be racing through the traffic at all. and I wouldn't be thinking I was letting anyone down. Okay, so all of us behave in certain ways, but along with that behaviour is always thoughts and emotions. Okay, this is really important, really important, because it's happening for our kids too, right? So when we are thinking about their behaviour, we can't just think about their behaviour. We've actually got to consider what's going on in their heads and in their hearts. And because we're in a relationship here, we've also got to be aware of what's happening with our behaviour and what's in our heads and what's in our hearts. Okay, this is where the beautiful dynamic comes in. So if we know and go, yep, cool, get it, behaviour, thoughts, emotions, got it, right? Okay, so why do kids misbehave? What's going on and what can we do about it? So there are 4 main categories. We had to categorise everything that was going on. We'd come up with these 4 categories. I'll tell you what they are and then we'll explore how we deal with them. So first of all, kids can misbehave because of a physical need. We'll come back to it. Kids can misbehave because of a skills or knowledge gap. Okay, we'll come back to that. There could be an emotional need, or it could be learnt behaviour. Right, so let's unpack all of these 4 things. Physical need. Who has ever had a toddler tantrum in the middle of the supermarket or the shopping centre or the wherever, some public place which is inconvenient? Okay, this has happened to me when my daughter was 2 years old, 2.5 years old, and my son had just been born, and it was Christmas time and we were down at Marion, I don't know why, trying to do Christmas shopping, and it was just crazy, and she was seriously had the most horrific tantrum right in the middle of Marion, and and everyone starts looking at you like you're, a really bad parent or something. And toddlers often misbehave because of a physical need, but so do older kids too, okay? So those days when you have a great day out as a family and you've been at the beach all day, or you've been at the footy, or you've been at the whatever, and you've had a great day, and then you get home and the kids just lose it and are so ratty, and then you're just like, oh, they've spoiled the day, and you get upset about it. Physical need. They're tired. If they're tired or they're hungry, right? If we are tired or hungry, we're not always at our best. We don't always behave as well as we should. Okay? It's true for our kids as well. So when we're seeing that ratty, terrible behaviour, we just need to take in the context. Like, what's been happening today? What's going on? Is this about just meeting a need? Do we just need to sit down and have some quiet time? Do we just need to feed that child? Let's just meet the need. So when my daughter's having a tantrum in the middle of Marion, what we did was just scoop her up and get the hell out of there. Because seriously, she was like in complete overwhelm. Marion, it's not, at Christmas time is not the best for anyone, let alone a toddler. And we just got out of there. But if, for example, we really had to get some shopping done and we couldn't have got out of there, one of us, because I was with my husband and the baby, and we could have just taken her somewhere, I don't know, some quiet corner of Marion, if they exist, just got her something to eat, a baby chino, just tried to create a bit of, because that's what she needed. If we had said, oh, God, tantruming, we've got the shopping to do, this is ridiculous, this is terrible, and dragged her along and kept taking her all the shops and all, because that was our need, fine, go into battle if that's what you want. But it's not the only way to do it. So sometimes we just need to meet their need. Okay. Sometimes there is a skills or a knowledge gap in our children, so they don't behave very well because of that. So they're little people who are learning, and developmentally, kids go through the same stages, but they do it in their own way. They do it at different times, different time frames, but they're still going through this developmental progression, right? So sometimes we can overestimate what our kids are capable of. Now, I don't know about what mornings are like in your house, but mornings can be so stressful. And I'm like, you know, this is actually not how things are anymore, but what they used to be like was just, you know, I just have this map of the morning, right, of what needed to happen when, so that we could get out on the door on time, because of course getting the kids out the door on time meant I could get to work on time, and you know, everything hinged on that. And if they're not doing what I've asked, or they're not listening, or if they're not, you know, that just whoa, and then I end up yelling from the other end of the house at them, and then, you know, they're not listening to me. Why aren't they listening to me? It's such a terrible way to start the day. And I've got this map in my head, but they don't. They don't have that. Even my husband doesn't have that map in his head. So one really simple thing you can do with kids, and teachers do this really well, is they just hand over some of the responsibility to children by getting some of that map out of their heads and putting it on the fridge, right? So you would see, if you walk into a classroom, they've got this is what you do when you get to school in the morning. You know, put your bag away, get your reader out, you know, like there's all these little pictures and all these little tasks, right? And in fact, our kids can have the same at home. Let's just do up a little chart, and importantly, do not do it for them, okay? This is not your job. You get them to do it, or you do it with them. They pick the pictures, they pick the order, they pick the tasks, okay? You put it on the fridge, and then do you know what you can do? Instead of yelling at them, why haven't you brushed your teeth? Aren't you dressed? Have you packed a bag? You can go, where are you up to on your list? Oh, how are you going? What are you going to do next? Okay, so you're actually upskilling them. You're not the one who's responsible for everything that's happening in your home. You're setting expectations, but you've done it together. And then you support them to do what needs to be done. So sometimes we can think our kids have got it all together, or they should have, and particularly if we've told them 20 million times. But sometimes we just need to set up some systems and some structures for them so that they can do it for themselves. And the way to think about this is, do you remember a time when your kids could not tie their shoes and you had to do it for them? Or maybe you just got the shoes with the Velcro. I don't know, because it made it easier. But, you know, at some point, kids have to learn how to tie their shoes, don't they? But we start here. We start with doing everything for them, right? And then we take one step over here and we show them how to do it themselves. And then we go one step over here where we don't even show them, we just watch them do it, and we kind of guide them a little bit to do it themselves. And then we go one step over here where we're not doing anything for them because they're doing it for themselves. Okay? So I think lunch boxes are a great one for this. Okay? If you are still making your child's lunch, their entire lunch, and they are 5 years old or above, don't do it. Give them at least one thing to do themselves. They have to fill their drink bottle, or they have to pick a piece of fruit, or they have to pick a snack. Okay? And then little by little, hand it all over. Teach and guide. That's what we're here to do. We're here to teach and guide. Okay, emotional coaching. We are going to have to talk about this in more depth, so we'll just skip over this one because it's a huge one, but it's a whole other topic. Learnt behaviour. This is a really good one. So you know when your child is on their iPad and you tell them to get off and they don't want to and they scream and yell and then you say, oh, okay, another 5 minutes, right? What's going to happen next time you ask them to get off their iPad? Yeah, yeah, because the 5 minute ends up being half an hour and then you're... So we are really good at teaching our kids behaviour that we don't want to see in them, right? We're actually really good at it. But we don't... But it's much easier, I think, to blame our child, right? But many of us are complicit. Because you know, we're here to set, we definitely need to set boundaries as parents, true, but what's our kids' job? Push the boundaries. See how far you can push the boundaries. So if we allow them to push the boundaries and we allow them to push the boundaries and we keep allowing them to push the boundaries and then we get upset when they push the boundaries, that is behaviour that we've taught them. Okay, so I had a mum at a talk like this who said to me, oh, my son drives me mad. I think he was 8 years old. He won't sit down and eat dinner with us. And she said, I've tried everything. I've tried threats. I've tried bribes. I've tried, she tried everything and nothing works. He doesn't care. And she said, and then it gets to bedtime and he wants his dinner. And I'm like, oh, and what do you do? What do you think she does? She gives him dinner. And I said, oh, why do you give him dinner? Oh, because he'll probably, he'll be hungry. He'll go hungry and then he'll wake me up in the middle of the night and he'll want food. And I went, have you ever tried not giving him dinner? She never tried not giving him dinner. So there's no reason for her son to eat with them at dinner time. She's taught him that he can eat whenever he wants. You can't blame the child for that. I'm sorry, you can't. Now, you might decide, and I'm not saying that this is wrong. She was upset by what was going on in her family. You might decide, oh, I don't care. I don't care if my child eats dinner with us. He can eat later. Fine. If it works in your family, that's fine. But she was really upset about it. But it was something he'd learnt from her. Okay? So that's why when we're thinking about behaviour, we can't just think about our child. We've also got to think about ourselves. What are we teaching our kids? What are we teaching our kids when we do what we do? Okay, so some behaviour coaching key takeaways. Don't just look at your child's behaviour. Don't just look at the tip of the iceberg. It will just lead to frustration and battles. Think about what's going on underneath the surface. What might they be thinking, feeling? Okay, what's going on in their world? It'll give you more compassion and understanding and will therefore open you up to a better solution. But you can't just focus on your child. You've also got to notice, what are you thinking, feeling, doing? Okay, how are you contributing to what's going on, contributing to the behaviour? And we'll talk a little bit later about some of the things we can do when we realise that we want to try something a bit different to what we're doing now. But all we're doing with behaviour coaching is understanding behaviour and trying to guide our kids to make better choices. It's really as simple as that. Simple, but not necessarily easy, but much easier when we take in the full picture of what's going on for our child and the full picture of what's going on for us. Okay, so let me share with you how some of our parents have responded to this behaviour coaching ideas.
I think the really important thing that I learnt from the positive approaches is the pause. That's stopping and managing my emotions before I react to what the children are doing. So the pause, connect, and then having time to think of a new solution with the child. I think it's something that we all know, but it's something that we forget to do. So emotions can snowball and children take on the emotions you're exhibiting as well. So if my children are yelling or grumpy, I can mirror their emotions, making theirs even worse. So if I can pause and stop and control myself, it's as simple as taking some breaths. Turn away, don't react straight away. The children can see that, and we can have a calmer discussion, deal with the emotions in the moment, and then come back when we're both calm to find a new solution for the situation we're in.
So simple, but so effective, just in backing off a little bit and not being so hard on yourself. Just simple, tiny little thing that you can change every day can make a massive difference in their behaviour. And ultimately that's what we want. We don't want to be yelling at our kids and things like that. So I was most surprised by that. Something as tiny as, learning just to step back and just, take a breath and back off can just change how you totally deal with that situation in the next moment.
I'm more mindful of my parenting now, whereas before I was probably more ruled by emotions, how I was feeling, and then I'd just really respond from there, whereas now I'm coming to a situation and I'm assessing it and I'm thinking about, well, how am I feeling at this moment? Do I really have the emotional ability to deal with this in the way that I need to? How are they going? Are they particularly tired, or are they really hungry?
They definitely assess the emotion you're bringing to the interaction with them. So if you're going to come in hard, they're going to equally meet you there.
This is a very nice segue into our next section, which is emotional coaching. If anyone has tried to reason with a highly emotional child, you will know that it will get you next to nowhere. Next to nowhere, okay? So that's why we can't just be good at behaviour coaching. We've actually also got to get good at emotional coaching. And do you know what? If the whole world was good at this stuff, if all of us understood our emotions, knew how to work with them, not against them, the world would be a completely different place. Completely different. I don't know about you, but I did not learn this stuff. Not explicitly. So we've got a real opportunity here to work really positively with our kids around their emotions. It's really important stuff. To me, this is like even more important than the behaviour stuff, because this is where you go a bit deeper. And this is where, if you don't do this piece, the behaviour stuff isn't going to be as effective. So, has anyone or everyone seen Inside Out? Yeah? Okay. So, if you haven't, please watch it with your children. If you have, watch it again with your children. What this movie does so well is these are the 5 main emotions. These are little characters who live inside the main character's head or body, mind, her soul, whatever. Riley, I think she's an 11-year-old. So the little red guy's anger, and then we've got guilt, joy, fear, and then sadness. Okay? This is a really good way to think about our emotions. It's also a really good way to teach our kids about their emotions. Okay? We are not our emotions. Our children are not their emotions. But emotions are like characters in our life. Okay? And they play a really important role. If I asked you how emotions dealt with in your family growing up, I reckon you'd tell me that there's one of two ways, which I'll talk about in a minute. But for most of us, it wasn't necessarily the best way to deal with emotions. And I think collectively as a society, we're really bad at this stuff. Really, really bad. So Inside Out is a great way, though, to think about our emotions, okay? Because the thing that all that emotions are, right? What is an emotion? All it is energy in motion, okay? Imagine it like a wave, and this is how they work. Like they kind of enter our system, they normally peak like a wave does, and if we allow it, they dissipate and they pass, okay? So we get angry, but then we get over it. We get upset, but then we get over it. That's all emotions are, energy in motion. They are always here for a reason, okay? Again, they are not random. They don't appear for no reason. They are always here to tell us something about ourselves, okay? They're not telling us about anybody else or even about the situation. They're telling us something about ourselves. Nobody can make you feel anything. I'm going to say that again. Nobody can make you feel anything. They can't. Let's go back to that. Let's go back to that example of the running late, right? Okay. If you do not have a problem with running late, you are not going to be stressed out by running late. Okay? If you have a problem with running late, you'll be stressed out by running late. The running late is not causing the stress. Your beliefs and your approach to running late is what's causing the emotion. Okay, we'll unpack this a little bit more so it makes sense. But it's really, really important to know that emotions are really valuable. All of them are worthy. There are no good and bad emotions. And they're always here to help us. It's the same for our kids. Okay? You cannot blame your anger on your child. You cannot blame your anger on that person cutting in front of you, right? In the road. You can't even blame your mother for your frustration and annoyance. You can't, okay? Because it's actually not about them, it's about you. And that's fine, all right? But we need to take that on. So, emotions are energy in motion. They come in, they peak. If we allow it, they leave. Right? That's all they're meant to do. They're meant to just give us a message. This is where we go wrong. We do one of two things. And if you think back to your families, there was probably a bit of an orientation to one or the other. Or you might have had one parent who did one or the other. Some of us are really good at amplifying that emotion, okay? And really getting stuck into it. So we get angry and we feel it with every fibre in our body and we wait till it peaks and then we act, right? That's where the yelling comes from, right? It feels justified at the time, right? But it doesn't really, after that, it doesn't really feel very good and it's not really who we want to be. But that's what we're doing. We got angry, we behaved out of the anger at its peak. Anger is not here to cause us to behave in any way at all. It's just here to tell us something, which we'll discuss in a minute. Okay, it's got a message for us, but it's not saying yell, right? It's just saying you're angry. It's a big difference. Okay? So we don't want to amplify, we don't want to behave at the peak, but we also do not want to suppress. Okay? If you grew up in a family where emotions were not cool, you were not allowed to express how you feel, okay, we get really good at shutting them down. So we start to feel something, we don't like the feeling, and so we shut it down. The problem with that is that it doesn't, okay, so it's a wave, right? If we actually allow it to peak and pass, it's gone. If we shut it down, it stays trapped in here. Then do you know what happens? It comes bursting out at inappropriate times, and normally we will react in a way that's far beyond what's actually going on in that moment. Okay, so a child does something really minor and we lose it because it's just been building up and up and up, and it's got to get out, right? Emotions were never meant to stay in, they were just meant to come and go. We've trapped them in and then they want to get out. At some point they will, but oftentimes not in the best way. Okay? This is true for our kids as well. This is why we need to get really good at emotional management, emotional mastery, so that we can teach it to our kids. Okay? So emotions are just here to come and go. We don't want to amplify them. We don't want to suppress them. So what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to do 3 things. We're supposed to acknowledge them. Oh, I'm feeling angry. Oh, I'm upset. Oh, I'm a bit sad about this. I'm really frustrated. If you only did that, you'd be like, it's almost, sometimes that's all you need to do. Because, as I said, the emotion, like you have to think about emotions, these waves, as messengers. They're here to tell you something about how you're feeling, what's going on for you. If you acknowledge it, they've done their job. Cool, she got it. Time to go. Don't need to be here anymore. She got the message, right? Acknowledge it. With our kids, when they can't do that for themselves, we do it for them. Okay? So we say, I can see you're upset. Okay? They're like, you've asked them to get off the iPad. And even though you agreed how much time they would have, and you gave them warnings, 5 more minutes, and then you say, get off, and then they lose it, I can see you're upset. What you're doing is you're actually helping them to name and acknowledge their emotion. You're doing it for them because they can't do it for themselves yet. Okay? But the more you do it, the more they will know how to do it for themselves. Okay, so we just need to acknowledge it. That's all. In fact, that's mainly what they want. We do need to feel it because you don't want to. You want to feel it so that you can understand it. You don't have to bury yourself deep in it. But you just want to feel it so that you don't push it away either. Okay? It's important for us to feel how we're feeling. It is. We don't have to behave from that place, but we have to feel it. And then we release it. And in fact, that's not even an activity because emotions will do it for you. That's their natural course. That's what waves do, right? They keep moving if we don't get in their way. So even if, there's 3 steps here, but really, if you just acknowledge it, that's the most important thing. And then you let it pass. When we say to our children, it's okay, don't be upset, don't cry, it is really well-meaning, but we could inadvertently be telling them it's not okay to feel how you're feeling, okay? And in fact, it's okay to feel everything you're feeling. So even to just say, I know you're upset, and supporting them through. So if we actually just support them through, then they will calm down, okay? The wave within them will pass through as well. Because with emotional coaching, there's two parts to it. One of them is what you do in the moment, which we'll talk about in a minute, and one of them is what you do afterwards, which we'll also talk about in a minute. Because, as we all know, when we are really emotional, reason, logic, it doesn't get through, okay? So we just need to be with the emotion, allow it to pass, and then we can talk on another level with our children. Okay, is this making sense? Oh, so energy, emotion, we acknowledge it, it passes, okay? That's what we're trying to do. So if we, what also helps with this is then understanding the meaning of emotions, like why they appear. As I said, they're not random. They don't appear for no reason, for us or for our kids. So we're going to talk about what anger means, what fear means, what sadness means, and what joy means. Okay, so let's start with anger. Anger is always about our own sense of right and wrong, okay? Our own personal barometer of what we think is right or what we think is wrong, okay? That's why, and because we have differences in this, that's why some person, like even a parent, same behaviour, the child's same behaviour, one parent will get really angry and the other parent won't. Okay? Different senses of being wronged. But if you feel like you've been wronged, you will get angry. Okay? Guaranteed. Right? Your child has not made you angry. That person who cut in front of you on the road has not made you angry. Your mother-in-law has not made you angry. Your sense of right and wrong has brought up the anger. Okay? When your child is on their iPad and you tell them to get off, right, and you only look at the behaviour and all you see is them yelling and screaming, saying they don't want to get off, what's going on in their heads? What are they feeling? They're in the middle of a really important YouTube video, right? You're telling them to get off. That's not right in their world, right? They get angry. They yell at you. Fine. That doesn't mean that they don't have to get off their iPad. And it doesn't mean that they're allowed to yell at you. But it does mean that you understand what's going on, you validate where they're at, and then you follow through with the right behaviour, your behaviour, okay? Because what we can do is either give in, right? Fine, that's fine if you want them to yell and scream at you every time, and sure, you can make that choice, it's fine, it's a choice. But if you want them to get off when you ask them, because you've agreed beforehand that's what you're going to do, and they yell at you, you say, I get it that you're upset, but we agreed, it's time to get off. You follow through. But if you try and go straight to the behaviour, or if you yell back because you're getting angry, because you know your sense of right or wrong is like, oh, I gave him the warning, we agreed, oh, we get angry, we yell back. Everyone knows what happens there. It's not great. It's not great, okay? So anger is always about our sense of right and wrong. Same for our children, okay? So it's really helpful for us to understand that. We don't need to fear anger. Like, there's nothing wrong with anger. Anger is just telling us about our moral sense of right and wrong, okay? That's its only job. We just need to take heed. Oh, okay. That's why I'm angry. Right, I get it. Let it pass. I can see you're angry. Sure. You still have to get off your iPad. Okay, fear. Does anyone have anxious children in their home? We're seeing a lot more of it. Fear is like really old emotion, isn't it? It's been within us as human beings since like year dot, when we had things to fear and we had to fight or flight, you know, we had to react, we had to respond to our environment. We now live in a pretty safe world, well, particularly in beautiful Adelaide, relatively, but there's still lots to fear in our world. There can be. And if you've had a child who has problems with school drop-off, or had the separation anxiety when they were littler, or don't like going into new environments, or hang back and don't and stop themselves from doing things, literally the worst thing we can do is to stop them from doing things, to facilitate that. The better thing we can do is actually help them to feel the fear, but do it anyway. Okay, we all have to do this in life, don't we? All of us. So fear is actually about when we feel uncertainty, okay, overwhelm, and we don't know what's going to happen next. So then what happens is what fear does really well is it helps us to focus. Okay? So if you think about, I had a mum who, her child had terrible separation anxiety every day at school. And if you focus too much on everything, that's too hard. If you just focus on really just bringing your child back to, okay, this is what we're going to do this morning. We're going to walk into the schoolyard, and then we're going to put your bag in your locker, and then we're going to take out your reader, and we're going to sit down, and we're going to have a little read, and then you're going to sit down at your desk and you start, whatever. So you're taking them through their day and you're focusing them in on just little steps they're going to take to walk through that anxiety. Okay, you're focusing them in. The other thing that really helps here, and this is part of the whole emotional coaching model, so if our child is angry, and we are angry too, and we respond with anger, what tends to happen is we just get exponential, spiralling upwards of just more anger and yelling and right? If we bring a counter emotion to that situation, so instead of us being angry, we're understanding, different dynamic. If our child is anxious and we are calm, very different dynamic. Because this mum was really anxious about her child's anxiety. And every morning she'd be all worked up as her child. And what we're actually doing then is our child is getting the sense that it makes sense to feel anxious right now, because I can feel my mum's anxious too. Okay, we don't mean to do this, but that's the dynamic. So the more that we are calm, the more we can help our kids through these anxious moments. Because almost all children, if we focus them in and be that calm, loving presence, they will be able to work through their anxiety. So focus is really good for fear or anxiety. Okay, sadness. Sadness is, I love sadness. It's actually a really beautiful emotion. Not many of us think it's a good thing, but I do, because it's about letting go. It's about releasing. Okay, so when our child comes home and they did not get picked for that team, and they're sad and they're disappointed, that's completely legitimate. And in fact, is what they should be feeling. And so it's okay for them to feel that. When they come home and say, my best friend wouldn't speak to me today, or no one played with me, and they feel sad, and we just want to fix it, we don't have to fix it. We just have to be with them with their sadness, because that's them releasing and letting go. Okay, we don't want to be one of those parents who doesn't want our kids to feel anything that feels a bit negative to us. Okay, it is completely fine for our kids to be sad. It's fine for us to be sad. We don't want to wallow in it. We don't want to stay there forever. But we do want to feel it, because again, it's there for a reason. So we just need to. So what emotion can we bring to our child's sadness that might help them? Probably love, compassion, understanding. It'll pass. They go back to school the next day and they're talking to their friends again. And then they don't get picked for that team, but they get picked for that team. Or something else happens. Okay? So sadness is awesome. Let's allow our kids to feel it. And I find that when many of us are living in families where there's stuff going on, we can actually forget to really connect in with and enjoy all those lovely moments. Because there's heaps of amazing stuff about our kids and our families. And joy helps to bring us together. So even though we're busy, and even though there's stuff going on, and even though nobody's perfect, if we really enjoy those beautiful moments together, it brings us together. And that's really, really valuable. So let's not miss those moments. Okay, so the key components of emotional coaching are: validate your child's feelings. I can see that you're upset. I get it that you're sad. Yep, you're looking pretty angry to me right now. Okay, you're just naming it. You're not trying to override it. You're not trying to get rid of it. You're acknowledging it. And then, what emotion can you bring to the moment that's going to be most helpful? Can you bring calm? Can you bring love? Can you bring understanding? Can you bring compassion? Or can you bring just firm control? Okay? The more that we're aware of where we're at emotionally with our kids, the more that we can then bring what's going to be most helpful. Okay, we are not going to get this right every time. We seriously will not. Okay? But the more that we bring our own awareness into it, the more often we'll be bringing what our kids need. Okay, so let's hear from some of our parents about this emotional stuff.
Just recognising emotions a bit more rather than getting frustrated by them being frustrated, kind of stopping and thinking about why the frustration's there and kind of being with them rather than, your instinct is to kind of, stop being upset, come on, it's fine, calm down. Now I'll kind of stop and think, well, the last thing I want to hear is calm down. And, I think now I probably give more of an opportunity for them to have a cry and to kind of go, it's okay to be upset, and allow them to have those tears. And it's like, once you've got your tears out and you're feeling better, then let's talk about it. Come back to me and, we'll have a talk about it, rather than trying to solve it in that moment when everyone just ends up getting really upset.
engaging with him on how he's feeling. I think that's been a big one. And just trying to figure out what's happening for him in that moment, actual sitting down, being with him and just talking to him about, okay, are you feeling angry? What are you feeling at the moment? Are you angry or are you sad?
I engage them more. Instead of shutting down that big emotion that they're experiencing, I'm able to go, okay, I can see that you're sad, or I can see that you're angry, and I can kind of help them travel through that experience. You know, what is making you sad? Oh, your brother's stolen your truck. Okay, well, why don't we talk about getting that truck back or playing a different game together? And they're definitely involved in that process more, but they're also understanding how they're feeling and how they're operating better. That big explosion emotion stuff lasts for less time because we can kind of work through it together.
Hitting was something that was a problem a couple of months ago. My little boy's 4.5, and it was really confronting because he's quite a gentle little soul. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he would just explode and start pummeling me. And it was really quite upsetting because I thought, oh, I don't know where this is coming from. This is not who I thought he was. And then I sort of had to reset and think, well, this isn't who he is. He's not a violent person. He's not out to hurt me. He's just really frustrated. So he's not allowed to watch another program on television because it's bath time, or he doesn't want to eat this for dinner, or just the smallest of things could set him off. And so just sitting down and having a bit of compassion and thinking, you know, when the printer at work stops doing what I want it to do, I want to throw it out the window. So he's trying to put his train set together and it's not working. So he's thrown it across the room and then come at me because he doesn't know how to deal with those emotions. And so dealing with that now, what I learnt to do was to talk to him about it and have empathy and say, look, I know you're frustrated. That's really hard. The train set, you know, the bits don't fit together like you want them to. Let's do it together. Let's work together. And yeah, just letting him know that I understand that life is hard and frustrating, and even though he's 4.5, we have different issues that frustrate us, but it's still the same stuff at the end of the day. And so he learnt to stop and think as well, and to ask for help. And I said, you know, I say still, because it happens still, we don't hit, it's not the way that we do things, but also to let him know that I understand why he's done that. Yeah, and give him permission to feel, but just to try and express himself in a different way, and that seems to be working now.
I spoke to him the other day about how trying to set the beginnings of norms in our family in terms of, okay, I understand that you're angry, but I don't want to be punched. I don't find that very respectful. So to actually understand that we as parents have feelings too.
Okay. So we've talked about behaviour coaching, we've talked about emotional coaching, and let me just say about the emotional coaching is I talked about that there's things you do in the moment and there's things that you do outside of the moment. And in the moment, the stuff you do is that acknowledging how they're feeling, but also then, as Amelia said, still saying, but we don't hit. Okay, so you're still correcting behaviour, but you're acknowledging the emotion before you correct behaviour. And then later on, you do some more emotional coaching where you say, you know, earlier today, when you hit me because you were feeling angry, that's not cool, we don't hit in our family. And then you talk to your child about what that feels like when they feel angry and what they could do instead, okay? And you work with them to come up with some ideas about what they can do when they're feeling that way, all right? And it might be just that, you know, with something like anger, it might be that they, you know, you get them to take a breath, or you do it with them, or you get them to go outside and run around for a bit, or you get them to come and have some quiet time, whatever it is. But there are ways that you can work with your child. So what we're trying to do is get them to understand how they're feeling, not to behave out of the feeling, but to still recognise where they're at. Okay, so now we have to come back to ourselves, right? Now, I'm going to preface this section with saying you are all awesome parents, right? And I know that because you're here in this room or at home watching, okay? You're all here because you love your children and want to do the best by them, all right? And if you only take one thing away from tonight that you want to try, then that's brilliant. So don't feel like you've got to change everything, okay? Because you're already doing really well, I'm sure. But we do need to come back to ourselves, okay? So we have many visions and versions of parents in our media world. And I don't know about you, I don't know what kind of a parent you imagined you would be before you became a parent. I think I thought I'd be a lot better than I was originally. I think I've gotten better as I've gone along. But, you know, we're learning as well. Okay, this is not just about the growth of our children, this is also about the growth of us. So we learn with our kids. But there are some things that we don't want to do as parents, okay? The first thing is do not do everything for your children. Do not, okay? In fact, I would love you all to go home tonight and say, what's one thing I can stop doing for my child? Stop doing it. Okay, so don't just, you know, drop them at the end of the driveway and expect them to get to school by themselves, right? But do it bit by bit. So this is the lunchbox idea, right? Where, you know, I had a mum who, like when my kids were in, what year were they? They were in year 6 and year 4. And I was chatting to a mum, it was the end of the year, and I was saying, oh, are you looking forward to the holidays? And she's like, yeah, I'm just so sick of doing my kids' lunches. And I said, oh, I don't do my kids' lunches. And she looked at me like, you know, I was a bit crazy. And she said, does your husband do their lunches? And I'm like, no, no, my kids do their own lunches. She said, oh, if it was up to my kids, who knows what they'd put in their lunchbox. And I said, oh, you know, well, I have categories, right? And this is the thing about if we want our kids to make their own lunch, we don't just say, right, over to you, handball, walk out the kitchen. You start bit by bit. Okay, you fill your lunchbox, you pick a piece of fruit. Next term, you pick a piece of fruit, fill your drink bottle, and choose a snack. Yep, okay. After that, right, you're making a sandwich too, right? And then you come to it, and they're doing it all by themselves. I actually have no idea what my children eat for lunch. I have no idea. They do it completely themselves because it's really good for them. They have to make healthy choices. They have to think about, they have to be organised. And I don't have to do it. Bonus, okay? Stop doing something for your children. Hand it over, bit by bit. Teach and guide. Give it to them. Do not be the parent who fixes everything for their children, okay? We see this a lot with kind of friendship niggles, where the parents will sweep in and want everything, you know, just try and fix everything. They do not want their child to be left out. They do not want their child to feel sad. They do not want their child to whatever, okay? It's completely normal stuff. I see parents who take kids out of school because of friendship issues, not because of bullying. I'm not talking about bullying. Normal friendship issues, right? Let them learn. Let them learn. Okay, don't try and fix everything. You don't have to. You can support them. You can understand. You can support. You can guide. You can teach. Okay, there was a period when my daughter, this often comes up for, particularly for girls, around year 3, 8, 9. Oh my God, friendship dramas, right? Oh, and it's because it's developmental, right? They're kind of at this stage where they're going, oh right, you know, they're getting their social web, network, fabric, like they're understanding it more, right? But they do not have the skills to navigate those relationships, right? How are they going to learn those skills? Fair amount of trial and error, okay? A fair amount of getting upset. There was a time when my daughter, we made her up a little like kind of care pack of things that she could do if no one wanted to play with her at lunchtimes. She took her book, she took her colouring in, she maybe needed it for a week, and then she was fine. But don't try and fix everything for your children. Guide, support, love, not fix. Don't try and control everything, okay? If you want them to do chores, right, give them a little bit of latitude to do it in their own way, in their own time, within reason, okay, within reason, so that they can learn responsibility. So they don't just feel like they're being dictated to. Many of us probably, like generations ago, it was absolutely fine for parents just to go, do what I say. And for kids to do what their parents said, right? You can't parent like that anymore. It doesn't cut it. Kids of today will not accept it, right? And in fact, we don't really want them to. We want them to think and do for themselves. So we've actually got to give them a little bit of latitude. So I'll say to my kids in the school holidays, you can have some screen time today. How much screen time do you think is reasonable? Sometimes they'll say less than I think than I was going to say, right? And then we go, okay, cool, right. So do you want to have your screen time in the morning or after lunch? Fine, they choose. But that's it, it's agreed. I'm not being dictator the whole time. I'm not controlling everything. I say, I left the house tonight. I said, one of you has to empty the dishwasher, one of you has to hang out the washing. I don't care who does it. It has to be done before I get home. So if we want everything done our way and perfectly, we're kind of not giving our kids, we're not actually including our kids in the family enough. Okay, so when you can, just give them a bit of space to come to things in their own way. Okay, so the other thing we don't want to do is be really disciplinarian. Okay, we do know that kids do not thrive in families where there's lots of really harsh criticism and not much warmth and love. Okay, you all know this. But kids do also not thrive when we let them get away with everything. Okay, there are some families in this town where the kids run the show. Everything happens on their terms. Okay, kids are not good leaders, family leaders, right? Because they are children, right? We are adults. We are the leaders in our family, right? We are benevolent leaders, okay, which we'll talk about more in a minute, but we're still leaders. Do not let your kids run the show. Do not let them get away with everything. Do not be too permissive. It's not good for kids. Okay, so let's talk about 4 key practices that kind of brings all this stuff together and crosses over the emotional and the behaviour coaching. These are the 4. So some of the parents have already spoken about the first one. Oh my God, it is like the simplest of practices. It is so powerful. It's really effective. It is really simple. Just pause. Okay? Instead of reacting, pause so that you can respond. Okay? 1 breath. It could be 1 breath. It could be walking away for a minute, because you know that if you don't, you're going to lose it, right? It could be, with that emotional coaching I talked about, like, let's come back round to this when everyone's calmed down and have a better conversation about it. We don't want to act out of our emotion, okay? We just want to recognise that we're feeling angry or upset and that we just need to take a breath. You will behave so much better, guaranteed, if you pause. Okay? It's what our kids need from us, right? So just take that breath. What that pause allows us to do is to then connect. Okay? We want to know, get some sense of what's going on for our child and what's going on for us. Okay? What are we thinking, feeling, doing? What's my child thinking, feeling, doing? What am I thinking, feeling, doing? When we take in the whole picture, we're much more likely to be able to respond, behave in a way that's going to be more helpful. Okay, so connect. All right, this is not connecting. This is what I've done many times. Mornings. Yelling at my kids from the kitchen, right there at the end of the house. Why aren't you getting ready if you don't? Right? That's not connecting. They've like completely tuned me out, like, you know, weeks ago. Right? Don't even hear it, don't care. Walking down to your child's room and going, oh, where's watching YouTube on your morning list? It's not. Put that away and finish getting ready. Right? Connecting. Connecting, eye contact. Understand what's going on for yourself and for them. Then you make better choices, and then they will too. Because I had a mum say to me, you know, I realise that I'm yelling at my child to stop yelling. Right? It's not kind of good behaviour modelling, is it? Then we can go on to actually guide and teach. One of the best things that we can do with our children, particularly from 5 up, is to involve them in the problem and the solution. Okay? And one of the really good ways is, I'm a big fan of family meetings, a forum where your kids and you get to have your say. What's going really well in our family? Always start with a positive. Great. What's not going so well? Okay, what are we going to do about that? So, you know those times when I ask you to get off your iPad and you yell and scream and won't do it? That's not cool in our family, okay? That's not what we do in our family. What are we going to do about that? Pause. What do you think we should do when I ask you to get off your iPad and you don't want to get off and you start yelling? What do you think should happen? What do you think we should do about that? Okay, they might think of some really good ideas, right? They might not. That's fine. You've asked the question. You've involved them in the problem and you then help them with a solution. Okay, well, here's some ideas. Why don't we agree that after school, if you've done your homework, you can have an hour screen time. You can be on Xbox, you can watch telly, you can be on the iPad, whatever. Okay? What would help you? I get it. I know that when you're on the iPad and you're just like really engrossed, you don't want to get off. I don't either. Okay? I get it. I understand that. But you have to get off and then help with dinner or whatever. What can I do to help you to get off? So, okay, well, I'll give you a warning. Right? Anything else that would help you? Well, you know, there might be another idea. Okay, we're going to agree. I'm going to help you by doing this, and you're going to help yourself by doing this. What should we do if you still don't want to get off? What should the consequence be? Okay, let's agree. Next day, tomorrow, you don't get your screen time. Do we agree? Do we all agree? Deal. Okay, my daughter is doing work experience this week, and she's at a local primary school, and she's been doing in the drama classes, and she's been working with the little kids, and they're like, we just want to play games. And the teacher's like, no, we can't just play games, but I'll do you a deal. The deal is that we do this first, and then we can play a game. Deal? And all the kids go, deal. All right? And then they do it. Okay, so you've all agreed. You have agreed. What's your job as a parent then? because they're going to forget, right? Or they're not going to get it right. They're still going to be upset, maybe. Your job is to follow through on what you've agreed, right? You are not. So this is, and let me contrast this with, you know, won't get off screens, yelling, screaming, and then you go, right, that's it. You're not going to your friend's house on the weekend. Foot down, right? And then what? Is your child more or less upset? Okay, right? You've pulled in a consequence out of the blue that's actually not even related to iPad use, and with no warning. And I know why we do it, because we're annoyed, we're frustrated, we're angry. This has happened before. Okay, we sit down with our kids and we problem solve with them once everyone's calmed down. Right, okay, let's try that out. And next family meeting in a week's time, let's see how we're going. Okay. Shared responsibility. That's one word for it. Another word for it is empowerment. Okay, you are empowering your children to make the right choice. And as I said, with these kids who know their own minds, okay, and are strong-willed, you actually can't work any other way with them unless you want to be in a constant butting heads. And if you want to do that, go for your life. It will drain you of life. It'll take many years off of you, but you could do that. Or you can work collaboratively with them. Then do you know what you're doing? You're actually teaching them really important life skills. How to get along with others. How to problem solve. How to negotiate. What happens if you don't? So let's involve them in the problem and the solution. You can actually do this with kids younger than 5. It's just you probably do a bit more prompting and you just simplify it. It's the same principle. It really is. Okay, and then you do your check and your review because we're not going to get it right. So I'll give you an example. There's a family I worked with and with the parents. I worked with the parents and they said, oh, you know, swearing is a problem in our house. And, you know, the kids swear, it's terrible. But she said the problem is that, you know, I grew up around pubs and I can sometimes swear too. And so then what they did is they sat down as a family. We don't want to swear in our family. That's not cool. That's not what we do. Okay, what are we going to do about it? So her son says, oh, I think we should have a jar where every time you swear you put money in, right? And they went, yeah, okay. They all agreed that's what they were going to do. They did collect a bit of money because, you know, they were learning not to swear. And then they were trying to work out, well, what do we do with this money? Because we've collected a little bit of money. What do we do with it? And I said, go ask your kids, right? And because they thought, oh, maybe we, you know, go out for a family dinner or something. And then they're going, oh, but that seems like a reward. We're not trying to reward swearing in our house. They couldn't work it out. And then their son, who was the problem child, said, I think we should donate that money to Hutt Street Centre, to the homeless. And they went, oh my God, I never knew my child had it in them. Okay? And so they came up with a strategy and it sounded good and they started using it, but then there was a problem. And this often happens, right? You have to iterate, right? So the problem was when the sister heard her brother swearing, but the parent didn't. And then the brother goes, no, I didn't swear. No, you have to put the money in. No, I didn't swear, you know. And then so they was like, oh, this is a problem. What do we do? And so then they had to problem solve that. Okay, well, when, you know, we have to, I can't remember exactly what they did, but they came up with a solution for that too. So you do it together, right? Your kids are much more likely to go along with it because they've been involved, right? You're holding them responsible, but you're also empowering them. And you're setting expectations. Okay, so we want to focus on discussing as a family. What's the problem? What can we do about it together? And we need to revisit it. What's working well? What do we need to do better? Okay, let's hear from some of our parents.
just a way to build in some family values, so things around helpfulness. So it's, you know, we all help each other in the family. So, you know, when everyone's kind of shouting at me that they're hungry and they want dinner, it's like, well, if we can all help, we can get it on the table quicker. So my son, actually the other day, he went and drew himself a task chart and stuck it on the fridge and said, these are all the jobs I can do to help the family. But he can set the table, he can give the cat biscuits and things like that. So he actually stuck it on the fridge and yeah, drew all the pictures of the different activities that he can do to help and get things moving. So yeah, so he automatically clear his plates from the table, and you know, I would not have thought that he could do that at 5, like just in terms of just, yeah, we don't even remind him. He'll just get up and move his plates into the kitchen and, yeah, can reach everything. So, you know, I've put things at a level where they can all get to their stuff. So she sees that and then she'll help as well. So he'll get things to pass on to her to set the table.
I talked to my daughter about how we can get ready for school in the morning without all the drama. I've got my 4-month-old as well that I'm trying to negotiate, and we're alone in the mornings because my partner leaves at 6 to go to work. So we decided that it would be easier to wake up earlier and not rush and fight our way through traffic, that we actually could take our time and that she could actually play in the mornings. So instead of me nagging her every 2 seconds, come on, we have to go, I said to her, well, how about, what do you think? If you're running late, then you have to go to the drop-off zone because I won't have time to find a park and walk you to class. And she said, yep, that's fair. So she then said, okay, how do I know what time it is? And I said, well, you make a chart in the morning of what you need to do. We'll put it on the fridge. So she drew pictures of what she had to do. We put it on the fridge. And then I say to her, okay, you've got this amount of time, let's go. And I say, check off your things. And if you do them, you know, without too much messing around, you'll be on time to not go to the drop-off zone. And that's worked really well.
Something new we've been focusing on is involving our children in part of the problem solving. So I guess we had an interesting situation where my daughter had just started a new sport and she'd got her new uniform and she was very excited about it and wanted to wear it the day before she actually needed it. And it was freezing cold. It was just a tiny pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and I was quite against this, fearing that it was going to get dirty, or, you know.
It's white and red.
Yeah. And she was very adamant that she wanted to wear it, but I knew that she wouldn't want her to have worn it dirty the next day. So it was I could see she was really going to really dig her heels in. So I was able to just kind of take a pause and think about her and validate her and say, yes, wow, I really can see that you love your uniform and that you are really enjoying wearing it. And then I was able to just really share with her the potential implications of what might have happened if she'd worn it where she wasn't meant to. And you could see her mind was ticking over. She still wanted to wear it though. And then I was able to say to her, well, what do you think we can do in this situation? What is it that you would like to do? And we were able to just kind of dig into what it was about this situation that she really wanted. And it was really just that she wanted to show it to her neighbours. So we were able to come to the agreement where she could wear she wanted to wear shorts, so she could wear a different pair of shorts, but she was able to take the uniform with her and show everybody, and it was still pristine for the next day, I guess. So it was just nice to be able to say, oh, right, I don't have to have all the pressure on me and make all the decisions and come up with all the options. They can actually help, and it's actually a lot more
validating for them.
Validating and peaceful for us, yeah, which was really great.
If they have problems, I'll ask them, what do you think? What we need to do to fix that? What we need to do that better? Or, for example, I will ask, if you get a chance to do it again, what will you do differently? Even though I have those leading questions, probably eventually, most of the time, the answer will be still from me. But I would just hope, that could give them something to think, to start thinking about, even though they don't know the answer now. And they're still quite young.
Okay, so we've talked about behaviour coaching, emotional coaching, and our own qualities that we bring to our parenting. And if I had to sum it up, this is my summary for you. So when we're looking at behaviour, do not just look at behaviour. Try and understand what's going on for your child, what they're thinking, feeling, as well as what they're doing, and also what's going on for you, what you are thinking, feeling, and doing as well. With emotional coaching, validate the emotion, acknowledge it within yourself, acknowledge it to your child, and then see if you can bring an emotion that's actually going to be most helpful to that situation. Because then you can more likely work through that emotion together. And when you think about any problem in your family, think about how you can solve it together as a team. This is my role, this is your role, we're doing it together, this is all agreed, right? Then we're going to come back and review and see how we've gone. Final word from our parents.
I see guiding children's behaviour in a positive way, not as permissive at all. I believe it's a way of having empathy, and it's a way of balancing power, nurturing children, understanding that they're humans, little people that have the same issues that we have on a different level. I don't see that listening to your child, trying to understand what they're feeling, having empathy for the situation that they're in, I see that as a really positive way of guiding them through life, not as being permissive. It's different to giving in all the time to their demands. It's not spoiling a child. It's creating a relationship in which you both get what you need and what you want. And it's helping to nurture that child's personality and the person that they're meant to be or to become. If we're constantly nagging, if we're constantly making them submit to our power because we're the parent, that dynamic just doesn't work. And I think we see that in broader society. You know, when we see each other eye to eye, things work out much better. You know, it's a democracy that we live in. So I think if you see your family more in that way, where we can sit down and negotiate. Negotiation isn't giving in, it's making sure that everyone gets what they need and what they want.
So when we talk about changing behavior in our family, I was thinking more of learning to be like a perfect mum and to make this beautiful, perfect family that everyone's behaved so well and they're all cheery and they're all happy. But I learned that that's not life and that's like a dream. So I think my thinking changed a lot. I learned that there's no such a thing as a perfect mum, and there's no such a thing as a perfect child or a husband. It is how we work through our day-to-day life problems and overcome them positively and become a very strong family.
Beautiful. I want to leave you with this parting thought, okay? So all of us, if we want to be good parents, one thing we can do is channel our inner Yoda, okay? We are here to teach and guide. We are here to love our kids. And we can do that without yelling, without punishing, without nagging, without being highly critical. And this is what I think, when I think about how I can be my best as a parent, this is what I think of. Allowing our children to be who they are instead of who we want them to be. Focusing less on what our children are not good at and instead focusing on what they are good at. Allowing our children to do and think for themselves rather than always doing and thinking for them. Helping our kids to find their own answers rather than telling them the answers all the time. Letting our children struggle and fail and make mistakes because then they learn how to persist and persevere. Encouraging our kids to be part of the problem solving rather than solving all their problems for them. Holding our kids accountable and responsible for their behaviour, but taking responsibility for our own behaviour as well. Guiding, coaching, mentoring rather than punishing. expecting our kids to contribute to family and school life and community life, because that's what we do as human beings. Encouraging our kids to pursue what interests them, what excites them, what motivates them, rather than always wanting them to be safe. And ultimately, loving and validating them for who they are. Thank you. Now, I believe we're opening up for questions.
I just want to apologise because this question's probably a little bit younger, because I know this talk's focused on 5-year-olds. But in the vein of validating and stuff, I just wanted to know your thoughts on toilet training in particular. Our son is really scared of the toilet seat, and yeah, like we tried to help him feel comfortable with his emotions and stuff, but yeah, like whether you have any suggestions on that.
Yeah, look, toilet training's toilet training, isn't it? Oh my God, like, so my daughter, I didn't teach her anything, right? She decided. My son did not care. And so it took a lot longer, and I went through phases of being frustrated and annoyed and calm and, loving, and I did everything. The thing about toilet training is it's just a process that you have to stick with, and you have to be as consistent, loving, and as consistent as you can. And then it will happen. It certainly will happen. But anything that you think would help him to feel a little bit better about sitting on the toilet, whether it's taking a little friend with him or you being there or some other thing, talk about it with him and see if you can come up with an idea together, and then try it out. And really it is the same principle, but it's just understanding that it might take some time and trying really hard to not get too upset about it all.
Hello, Judy.
Hello.
How okay or not okay it is to give an incentive? Like, if you do this, I'll give you a chocolate or a cookie, or, Yeah.
Okay. Good question. So what you've described is what we call extrinsic motivation, right? So we're trying to motivate our kids by giving them something that they might like, right? That's different to intrinsic motivation, where they just want to do it out of the goodness of their heart, okay? Right. So what we ultimately want is our kids to behave more from intrinsic rather than extrinsic. But if it's something, so I wouldn't bribe if so they're not doing what you've asked them to, and you say, if you do it, I'll give you a chocolate, like in the moment. I wouldn't do it like that. But if you were sitting down together and you were problem solving and you agree that not every time, but maybe at the end of the week or a couple of days, then that's fine, okay? So then you're agreeing on it together. And that's very different to you trying to bribe in the moment. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah.
Question from a webcast person. Our 7-year-old has been suspended from school due to poor yard behaviour. We've had meetings with teachers and have expressed that the behaviours they're saying, we don't see them at all at home. He's the complete opposite at home. How can we support this or encourage him to change his behaviour at school?
Yeah, so this is where some behaviour coaching, it might be a bit of both, because often kids will act out of big emotion, won't they? So it's a bit of, it's like talking to him about what's going on, try and understand what's going on for him, talking through some ideas of what he can do when that situation happens. When you're feeling like this, what can you do? Can you walk away? Can you do this? Can you, if someone says that to you, then you could say this, or you could, so you're actually trying to come up with ways for him to practice behaviours that are going to be more appropriate and more helpful in that situation. And we also have to expect that he's not going to get it right every time, and there might still be incidents, but you want to work through and problem solve And even like, you know, you can say, okay, you could even do like a little mini run through. Like, okay, so when that kid comes up to you and says that, you know, what are you going to say? And you can kind of work through it like a little, you know, scenario. Because you can't behave like that. But you can't just then say to kids, you can't behave like that. You actually need to help them to learn what they can do instead. And to give them some scope to practice and come into that learning.
With the great presentation, by the way, with validation, like, is it invalidating to say, yeah, I can see you're really angry and I can see you're really upset, but then set boundaries around the behaviour? So, like, is that...
No, that is validating. Yeah, so invalidating would be, you can't behave like that. Or, it's okay, don't be upset. Like, because the validation comes from acknowledging where they're at. I can see that you're upset. I get it that you're angry. I feel angry too sometimes when this happens. So you validate the emotion and then you can go on to, but it's not cool to behave that way. When you feel that way, this is what we could do instead.
Do you have any tips for parents who are separated and trying to parent across two households?
Yeah, and it is a challenge. And the thing is, it really does depend on the quality of the relationship between the two parents. But even so, you've got to understand your sphere of influence, and your sphere of influence is absolutely what happens in your home and when the kids are with you. And if you focus on that, then that's more helpful than getting upset about what happens in the other home, because it can be very hard to control that. I know it can be really challenging, and I know it impacts on what happens when kids get to you, but really focusing on what happens in your home, that's number one. Number two is helping with the transition. What can you do to help your kids transition from one home to the other? And it might be that they need a little bit of latitude, they need a little bit of leeway. It might be that you have a ritual where they come on Sunday nights, and every Sunday night you have, you know, pizza and movie or whatever. You know, there's some little ritual. And the other thing is if they are really struggling with what's happening in the other home, then you can do some behaviour and emotional coaching the same way we described before, which is, if this is happening, you could try this, without bagging the other parent. And I know that this can be really hard to do, because particularly if they are worthy of being bagged, it feels like it. You don't want to kind of ruin that relationship, but you could still help guide them to some things that might help them.
Hi Jodie, is it productive or counterproductive to compare my kids' current bad behaviours to what can happen to them as adults if they don't change?
Yeah, I see lots of parents in my private practice who are like, they're worried about the behaviour now is going to mean when they're teenagers or when they're adults or when they're... And I think the thing is, focus on now. Like, focus on now. And just focus on what your child needs to learn from you now. Don't worry about how it might manifest, you know, in 10 years' time. But also know that everything we're doing now with our kids is laying the foundation for later, okay? And the more that you focus on your connection with your child, the more it gives you leverage later on when they get to the teenage years. And the more they hear that little voice, your voice, in the back of their head. Right? That's what you're doing. You're planting the seeds for when you're not around. So I wouldn't worry about what might happen, but I would really focus on what you need to be teaching them now. And the other thing is that characteristic of your child, which is the most difficult, the most frustrating, that drives you up the wall right now, is probably the one that is actually going to serve them really well in life, okay? It's one of their defining. But what you're doing as a parent is you're helping to channel that characteristic into good, right? A good version not an evil, terrible version, okay? So we're just trying to channel it. We're not trying to get rid of it. And I wouldn't worry too much about what's to come. There's enough going on right now, isn't there?
Hi. I was just wondering if you have any comments about facing parenting differences in social settings, or whether there's an instance where another parent might expect your child to apologise or say sorry, or you know, those sort of incidences that occur.
Yeah, so sometimes, you know, like they're kind of a difference in values, aren't they, and expectations. And look, I just think it's probably best, if you can, to just be as gracious as possible in those situations. But then, of course, it does also depend on the relationship. Do you value the relationship? Is it important? Is there a way to talk about it, or is that not going to help? You know, so it's kind of a bit of a judgment call. But you want to, I mean, you do want to maintain your integrity as a parent, but you also don't want to feel like you're being judged and being made to do something that doesn't feel, you know. So I don't know, I kind of would tend towards trying to be gracious in the moment, but then get out of there, right? And maybe not go back.
Thank you for your presentation. In your practice, have you ever come across an introvert kid? And if you do, how do you go about them?
Yeah, so, you know, introverts are cool. Nothing wrong with introverts, they're great, except when we worry that they might not get along with others, or they might be a bit too anxious, or they're not that extroverted kid that can just run into the party and make friends with everybody. So I think, you know, it's just about understanding that that's your child's nature and working with them. So, you know, if they have a problem with walking into a party and meeting new people, and you can help them with that, and you can guide and teach and give them some ideas about what they could try, or, you know, you just stay with them a bit longer because that's what's going to help them to finally, then that's fine. Sometimes, though, they actually don't have a problem, but we have a problem, right? And maybe there's not a problem. There might not be a problem. It's okay to be an introvert, except when it's in the same way with anxiety. It's fine to feel anxious. Like, we all feel anxious about sometimes. It's just when it stops you from doing something you want to do.
Should consequences only be discussed before problems occur, or can you let child know of consequences once behaviour is a problem?
I think they work much, much better if you agree beforehand. Okay, much, much better. Unless it is something like really severe, really like, you know, dangerous, it is much, much better once everyone's calmed down to talk about it and to agree on consequences. It'll be much, much more effective. That doesn't mean they're getting away with it. You're still having a conversation at the time, and you're still saying, that's not how we behave in this family.
What are your thoughts on smacking and its relevance as a shock punishment for smaller children?
Totally against smacking, totally unnecessary. The research shows it is not helpful. Your children do not need to be shocked into anything. And I do not agree with smacking at all, under no circumstances.
This probably needs another seminar, but what are your thoughts on sibling rivalry, especially the older child, you know, kind of bullying? Got a dialogue once, I don't have a dog at home, I have a brother, so what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't get all of that.
Yeah, so basically, any thoughts on sibling rivalry, especially
sibling rivalry,
the older
yeah.
child?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sibling rivalry. Love sibling rivalry. Siblings are an awesome space for kids to learn how to share, how to negotiate, how to get along with others, right? And so a couple of things with siblings. We do not always need to intervene, okay? There are times when we need to actually allow our kids to sort things out themselves, not if it's dangerous and they're whacking each other, but at other times, okay? Then what you do is you problem solve together. Right, okay, so both of you want to play with this. What are we going to do about that? So first of all, you say, okay, you tell me what's happening from your perspective. Right, okay, you be quiet. You tell me what's happening from your perspective. Right, you be quiet. Okay, what are we going to do about it? You give me your ideas, you give me your ideas. What do we agree on? Okay, so you're problem solving with them. They are part of the problem, they are part of the solution together. Okay, really good skills for them to develop. It is not up to you to always come in and choose who did wrong, right? And pick sides and then the other person gets upset, right? You're the mediator. That's what you are.
Just speaking to that, can you just take it away? Like if they're fighting, can you just take it away? Won't that promote them just to learn to solve it before you get there? Is that bad?
No.
Okay.
Go for it and see what happens.
Yeah.
One last question. I'm a step parent. Our nearly 13-year-old has a screen addiction which does him no good. He has influences in his life which concrete this addiction further. It's fine to say don't expect them to be what you want them to be, but if they're on a non-constructive path, we can't let that continue either.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. So you have values in your family. You have family rules. You have expectations, okay? And if your kids are living under your roof, then they need to be a part of that. Okay, so addictive behaviour can be really difficult, but it's still behaviour and it can still be changed. Okay, but particularly with 13-year-old, you need to agree on what's going to happen, consequences, and you need to follow through. And you also, hopefully, encourage them to have other things go on in their life that's not just about screens. Can they get involved in some other stuff? Can you take them and do something else with them so that it's not always about screens?